Welcome back to Spooky Holiday Shit on Unwanted Horror Opinions. Today we are going to dive into an incredibly well done anthology from 2015 known as A Christmas Horror Story. So, this movie is narrated a bit by William Shatner. He plays radio host called Danger Dan. Because, radio hosts have the best names sometimes, regardless. And his grumpy weatherman that really hates Christmas that we find out, but more on him later. So there's 4 stories in this anthology, and instead of doing one at a time, they all kind of bounce between them, which is a lot of fun, and in a very light, minuscule way, they all kind of tie to each other, but in the very slightest of details that it's still their own story. So the 4 stories that we have involve a changeling, 3 teens doing ghost hunting in an abandoned school basement because that's smart, a delusional mall Santa, and of course a Krampus. So all of these stories, as we said, happen at the same time. I'm going to dive in each tale individually. I'll even point out the little details. So get all cozy, and before I do begin, that I will disclaim some trigger warnings beforehand for each story. So let's start off with our 3 teens locked in the basement. Trigger warnings for this one can be for, you know what, I'll just say it, abortion and light hints of sexual assault. So let's go. So we find out the school that these teens are going to investigate has a bit of a history. It involved a young girl being forced into an abortion. She was teen girl out of wedlock, and it was run by a bunch of nuns, so you know how they are on that kind of, child out of wedlock. This girl died in the process and still haunts the school. And these teens want to know why. And they go on the anniversary where 2 other teens had gone into the basement a year prior. They were brutally murdered, and the scene was so bad that one of the cops had to take a stress leave. So, what do these teens do? They have to investigate to get the real story. So they obtain the keys to get into the basement from another one in their friend group who is unable to join them. She has to go do family shit because, it's Christmas time. All this shit's taking place on Christmas Eve. So they go in and try to make contact with the spirit. They're trying to investigate, and surprise, they get locked in. Later on, the only girl of the group, there's 2 guys, 1 girl. The girl is possessed and starts trying to sleep with each of the boys. One rejects her advances, like, no, this is wrong, and she kills him. Goes to the next boy, who you can definitely tell he has a crush on her. So at first he's a little resistant, and she kind of forces her way on him, but she's possessed. She physically doesn't know what she's doing until after. Then she knows what she's doing. So I guess it's an assault on both of them, but kind of not. I don't know. I really don't know. So, I'm not going to read too deep into that one. Of course, panic ensues. They're trying to figure out what the hell's going on because, there's been a bunch of, spooky shit happening throughout. So they go to find their other friend, and they find him dead. And they're like, while they find him dead, they realize, oh no, we're in this dead girl's room. We need to get out of here. But they get locked in. The other boy is killed. The other girl gets to go free. So essentially the whole point of it is she kind of impregnates another teenage girl to carry her unborn baby so she can rest in peace. No idea. It's weird, but it's still really well written. It's pretty creepy too. There were a few parts in this segment that did scare the shit out of me and made me jump, but I'm jumpy as all hell to begin with, so no surprise there. So let's go on. Our next segment I'm going to dive into is our changeling story. So trigger warning, this one does involve missing child, threats of child abuse, and a bit of touches on mental health, but they don't dive too much into it. So remember that cop from the first segment who had to go on a stress leave? Yeah, this is him and his family. So the story opens with him, his wife, and his son. They're heading into the forest to find the perfect family Christmas tree. Sign of manhood and I don't know, whatever the hell Americans really do with their spare time. Of course, they come across no trespassing sign somewhere along the way, and what do? They trespass. At least the dad does. The wife does protest, being all like, yo, we're not supposed to be in there. And he's all like, come on, it'll be fun. And they go in. But while they're searching for this tree, their son, Will, disappears. He starts frantically searching. They're freaking out. The wife's getting mad. Will reappears. So they gather him up and they just go home. But as we leave, we do see a recluse in the distance, so we know something's going to happen automatically. Now, the family returns home. They're decorating for Christmas, but Will is really quiet. He's pretty off. He's just sitting on the couch chilling. Dad tries to get him in to decorate the Christmas tree and to help out, and the kid's just like, no, I'm not doing this. But we're wondering, like, what happened with Will at this point. Like, did he see something? Did something happen to him? Did someone happen to him? Like, we're just wondering. So we're just along for the ride at this point. Now, Will starts to progressively act out. He's not listening. We see him at dinner just inhaling food. And, like, his mom's like, Kate, stop. You're going to choke or you're going to get sick. And he's not stopping. And finally, Dad's just like, okay, I'll just take the plate. And this kid stabs him in the hand with a fork. So as I said, progressively getting worse. But it goes on later and later. Will's father is passed out on the couch. He wakes up. All the presents that were nicely laid out under the tree for them all to open the next morning on Christmas open are torn right open. His dad freaks, and as a parent, I would too if I woke up and all the gifts were unwrapped. He goes barging into Will's room, demanding to know what the hell's going on, and kid's just kind of staring at him like, no, I'm not going to answer you. And this is where that trigger warning comes in. Like, his dad starts trying to remove his belt. Like, he's ready to just beat this kid. Mom steps in. She's like, no, get the hell out. He goes, and while she gets Will settled into the bed, phone rings, because, you know, who the hell's going to call at this awful hour? It's the recluse from the woods being all like, hey, so that's not your kid. This is a changeling, and you need to bring him back. Mom's just like, no, you're fucking nuts. Says don't call here again, hangs up the phone. But, you know, this got to Mom a little bit, so she goes, she's looking stuff up on changelings, doing her research, and then she hears a commotion out in the living room. She walks out to find her husband dead, and Will, like, just chilling. So she freaks out, goes and locks herself in the bathroom, calls the recluse back, and the recluse is just like, hey, this is what you gotta do. You need to bring him back to where you found him if you want any chance of finding your kid. And she's just like, hey, cool. And he's just like, but be careful, he's not gonna come willingly. He's been out long enough, and he's tasted human delights. So, you know, human food, cozy home, cozy bed, a mother's love. Like, this guy is not gonna come back willingly. She manages to capture him, drives him back to the woods. The recluse comes out, and he's just like, you can just leave him there. Like, he's not going to do anything while I'm here. You see a bunch of changelings in the background. Mom's obviously scared because, you know, she's in the woods in her PJs in the middle of the night with this creature that she thought was her son for the past, I don't know, like 8 hours. And the recluse is just like, no, my family's been watching him for years. And, you know, like, he gets rough with them. He starts explaining how they take care of them and they listen to them because they're scared of him and his family. And Mom's just like, hey, I brought it back, where's my kid? Recluse is just like, I don't know, I just wanted him back, kind of thing. She starts freaking out. One thing leads to another. She shoots the recluse and kills him. She starts sobbing because she has no idea where her kid is. This changeling goes up to her, kind of sniffs around, and then disappears. And then her son reappears. So in a way, the changeling's like, hey, you just set us all free. Here's your kid back. So in a way, he thanks her for setting them free. Again, this segment's not my favorite in all of them. I don't know. There's always one story in an anthology that you're just like, eh. And that's my eh for me. But I guess it's kind of a happy ending. I mean, her husband's dead, but she's got her kid back. So, win lose. Our next segment is our Krampus segment. So, that fourth friend that got her 3 friends those keys to the basement, this is her story. So, she is going out of town with her brother, there's only one brother, and her parents to visit some great aunt who is, of course, some rich old lady in the middle of the middle of nowhere. This family is kind of that typical upper middle class to first class, like, you know, they're well off. They can afford the finer delights in life. Yeah, I said delights, and I'm sticking with that one, actually. Anyway, they can afford the next 2 things. So we kind of learn that they are that typical family. Mom's a bit of a drinker, not really interested in what the husband wants to do. The husband just wants the family experience, but because he's kind of screwed up and spoiled his kids and kind of given his wife as well anything they wanted, they don't want to do that. The kids are just spoiled. They're obviously assholes. So we end up at our great aunt's house. Dad's trying to be all friendly, be all chatty, this, that, the other. The daughter's stealing shit, and the son is screwing around with an ornament, to which he is told not to multiple times. Great aunt's caretaker comes in, being all like, hey, you shouldn't do this. And the ornament he is specifically playing with is a Krampus. And he explains, like, no, like, this is what Krampus does. He beats children, he will kill them, this, that, the other. And this kid's just like, yeah, okay, bet. And finally just is an asshole and knocks this ornament over and breaks it. Caretaker gets pissed off. The aunt's just like, no, you need to leave. I'm having an episode. You need to go. So they all pile back into the car. And, back home they go. You know, mom is pissed off, daughter's pissed off, son's pissed off, because they drove hours just to be sent back home. Dad's lecturing them about being awful and how he just wants them to behave for once. And during all this commotion, of course, figure pops out in the middle of the snowy road, and to avoid hitting it, Dad swerves off the road, gets car stuck. After a bit more commotion, the family's just like, okay, we'll walk back to the aunt's house. So they start making their journey. But they soon realize they're not alone in the middle of nowhere. Something is stalking them. Sure enough, son, snatched up, is gone. Dad ends up getting badly injured. And they learn that what is stalking them is Krampus. So, mom, daughter, dad, they start hightailing it, even though dad's injured. They find a church. They run in, take shelter. Well, in there, they're like, okay, what do we do? And dad's just like, I can't go any further. Like, I'm not going to make it. And it's true, like, he's bleeding out at this point. So he's just like, wait, we're in a church. Why don't we confess our sins? So they start confessing them, but that doesn't matter. Because Krampus comes back and starts picking them off one by one. Gets dad first, then gets mom. Daughter escapes, makes it to her aunt's house to find a big cross on the door, and the door is locked. She is pleading for her aunt to let her in, begging her like she's scared, and obviously there's a giant creature trying to kill you. Krampus rolls up, and they have their final showdown. Ultimately, she sets him on fire, but while he's on fire, he returns to a human form, which is the caretaker. Aunt lets her in the house and explains the spirit of Krampus is very much like the spirit of Christmas. While the spirit of Christmas affects, good people and happiness and brings them more joy, the spirit of Krampus latches on to anger and genuine evil. That's why when the ornament was broken, she saw her caretaker's rage and booted them out because she knew what could happen. Well, this girl now realizes, hey, you basically offered us up as a sacrifice to save your ass, and the aunt starts pleading because Like, rightfully so. This daughter's getting pissed. She just watched her entire family get murdered, and it all could have been avoided. Now, just before dawn, her anger completely consumes her. She takes the form of Krampus, kills her aunt, and ends that sequence. So, definitely, we're going to move on to the fourth and final. I'm going to say another trigger warning, specifically to mental health, to burnout, delirium, and psychotic episodes. Because this one's crazy and a what the fuck thing, especially the twist at the end. But that can be triggering for people who kind of deal with that sort of thing. So, this segment starts at the North Pole. Wait for it. Santa and his elves are getting ready for Christmas, and, you know, it's Christmas Eve. They're gearing up, getting ready for the big night, and they're making all the toys, and things start taking a turn really quickly. One of the elves falls ill and dies. And Santa's like, what the hell? Because elves aren't supposed to die. But this one did. Well, technically he's not wrong, because this elf comes back as a zombie. So now we got zombie elves on our hands. And this elf's killing other elves. He's coming after Santa, coming after Mrs. Claus, and Santa's doing everything he can. As the story progresses, eventually there are no elves left. They are all these freaking zombie creatures, and it's just Santa and his wife. So he tries to protect his wife the best he can, and starts going and slicing through these elves. So he is making sure that these zombie elves are dead this time. Slicing through, unfortunately, his wife gets attacked and he has to kill her as well. And eventually he fights his way and ends up in the stables, where he comes face to face with Krampus, the one behind turning these cheery little elves into these vile monsters. Of course, there's a huge fight. Now, during such, Santa is about to win, like he's about to defeat Krampus, but Krampus starts begging for his life. Well, now Santa's confused. And then we see red and blue flashing lights. Now this is where that what the fuck moment comes in. Remember that grumpy weatherman that I mentioned with William Shatner's Danger Dan at the beginning of this video? Turns out he is a mall Santa. And he has snapped at Christmas, causing him to go into a delirium. And we start seeing flashbacks of him killing these elves, which are really just innocent, helpless mall employees. Some of them tried fighting back to defend themselves. Didn't matter. So, instead of slaughtering zombie elves, he was slaughtering people in the mall. He is obviously arrested, and that concludes our fourth and final sequence. Now that I've explained the entire synopsis of this movie, I probably missed details. If I did, just go watch it yourself to get them. Now, I really love this movie, and it's not just my love for anthologies. When they kind of intertwine and there is kind of that balance between them instead of just 1, 2, 3, 4, I really like that, especially when the transitions between each story is really well done, like this one was. And it has the horror element so beautifully written into it, along with a touch of that Christmas spirit. To all my horror fans looking for a good Christmas movie to really get you in the spirit, but you still want it to be kind of freaky, highly recommend this one. It's streaming on Shudder right now. It was actually featured on Joe Bob's School Tide Get Together the other night, if any of you caught it. So yeah, that concludes tonight on Unwanted Horror Opinion Spooky Shit. Tune in next time for another one.